Hello students, today we are going to take up the second part of the lesson disasters. Now the varied geographical conditions of different regions put them at different types of risks and they are known as natural disasters. Today we are going to take up one of the natural disasters which is earthquakes and we are going to talk about it in detail. Now, though there are many different types of disasters like floods, cyclones, droughts, earthquake is one of the most common type of a natural disaster. Now, when earthquake occurs, it is actually due to the interlocking plates which are found on the surface of the earth. Now, these plates are the uppermost layers of the crust. Now, when these plates tend to move against one another or they slip against one another, they produce huge amount of energy or vibrations along the earth crust. Now, this sudden shaking of the earth is known as an earthquake. So here we can see in the diagram how the plates are either sliding against one another or they are slipping against one another. And this kind of slipping or sliding leads to huge amount of energy to be released and that causes an earthquake. Earthquakes can also be triggered because of volcanoes. In this slide, we can see that a volcano is erupting and huge amount of lava is likely to come out from the Earth's crust. Now, when the lava comes out, it releases huge amount of energy and that releases all these energy along the crust in different layers and this can also lead to an earthquake. So if a volcano is erupting, that can also trigger a very strong earthquake. Now earthquakes occur without warning. Now that is what increases a huge amount of loss of life and property. The loss of life is even greater when earthquakes occur during the night, when most of the people are asleep. And when an earthquake occurs, we can see how buildings can collapse and the buildings structures they can override on one another. Now in order to reduce this kind of a damage, several countries have started to make earthquake resistant buildings. Earthquakes can also cause landslides. Now because of shaking of the earth, huge amount of loose earth simply slides down. And when they slide down, they can block the streams or rivers. Now because of this blocking of the streams and rivers, the rivers tend to overflow and they cause a lot of flood and damage to the nearby regions. In some places, earthquakes can also lead to fires. If An earthquake occurs below the sea or ocean, that is, in the ocean bed or on the seabed. Now, that can cause huge tsunamis. Tsunamis are harbor waves which can grow very, very high because of the energy of the earthquakes have been transferred into the water, and they can cause a huge amount of damage and devastation to the coastal areas. In the year 2004, huge earthquakes occurred under the floor of the Indian Ocean. Now, that generated tsunamis which killed thousands of people in Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Most earthquakes in India occur near the margins of the plates of the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. This area, which is the foothills of the Himalayas and the Ganga Brahmaputra basin, is a major zone of an earthquake. These areas which lie in this region in the northeast as well as the Tarai region of the Himalayas are the areas which are highly prone to earthquake. Earthquakes have also occurred in Maharashtra and in Gujarat. In Maharashtra, it occurred in Latur in 1993 and in Bhuj in the year 2001. Both these earthquakes caused huge amount of damage and devastation to these areas. Now, how are we to measure an earthquake? The point just below the Earth's surface, where the vibrations begin, is known as the seismic focus or the focus. And the point on the Earth's surface directly above the focus is known as the epicenter. Now, it is over here that the maximum damage takes place because the entire energy from the focus goes right at 90° to this epicenter, and this area is likely to be affected by an earthquake the most. A seismograph is an instrument or a device which is used to measure the vibrations of an earthquake. The magnitude of an earthquake depends on the energy released. It can be measured in a Richter scale or a Mercalli scale. So here we can see how the seismograph is working. When an earthquake occurs, it begins to jot down the lines and shows what is or how much is the intensity of an earthquake. And it records this intensity in the seismograph. This tells us what amount or how much of vibrations has occurred under the surface and how much damage this can lead to on the surface of the earth. Now, what are the ways and methods by which we can survive an earthquake? So, when an earthquake strikes or during an earthquake, we should always get away from the glass objects or windows because they can break and fall on us. If we are indoors, we should always crawl under a table or a bed, crouch near an inner wall. We should always cover our heads either with our hands or with a cushion or a pillow. We should hold the table or bed so that the vibrations do not allow things to fall on us. We should never run outside without thought and never try to stand in the doorway. Or we should not be running around from one room to another. We should only run outside the door when we are very close to it. We should never take a lift whenever an earthquake strikes. If we are driving, we should immediately stop the car and we should never park the car under a bridge. If we are to take a refuge, we should never take refuge under a tree because that can fall and it can lead to fatal deaths. Now, what are we supposed to do after an earthquake is over? After the tremors stop, check for injuries, all the damage which has occurred in the buildings, fallen electric wires, and fire. We should be ready for milder aftershocks that can follow after the major earthquake. We should listen to emergency warnings broadcasts on the radio. If we are living very close to the sea or an ocean, we should always be very, very careful because people who are living near the coast, they are likely to get affected by tsunamis. So, tsunami warnings are given, and we should be very, very alert during these times. Now, if you live in an earthquake prone zone, you should regularly practice in drills, mock drills, in order to learn how to survive an earthquake and how to get away if an earthquake strikes. Here we can see how children are being taught to move away during times of an earthquake. If they are not able to move out, they should crouch under their table so that they can be saved. Elsewhere, if you are in a very far off place away from your home, in an airport or in a railway station, what are the things you should be doing is all being taught in a mock drill. So I hope students you have understood and you have gathered enough knowledge about what is an earthquake and what are the do's and don'ts which you should be following when an earthquake strikes. So that is what we have enough time for today. Thank you.